to take this time to use some to educate them, to get them and make sure that they don't lose their skills. You know, it's just like if you didn't run for about 6 months, imagine what that first day out after 6 months of not running would be like. Same thing when your store does open again, what's your staff going to be like? And then finally, really treat each other well. I can't say it any better. Take advantage of what the government is offering. There are a lot of, again, all you got to do is Google it. There is a lot of money available out there. And a lot of that money is tied to keeping staff. And from everything that I'm seeing, and a lot of webinars, I know here in Chicago, there was just a webinar at noontime today run by the local news station advising small business owners how they can get some of these grants. But one of the principal and primary ones that are coming out of the federal government have a string attached, and that string is if you do not lay off your workers, this loan will be forgiven. So basically it's a grant. So I think you need to look into getting that money. And they say, even if you did lay off your workers, you can call them back and you can still take advantage of that. So I think you got to carve out, I don't know, a half hour of your day or whatever to really analyze, because this is the time when family, friends, and yes, even the government will help us. And that's what I would like to leave you with. And I will hang on here for the whole call and be more than happy to answer any questions or give you any insights that I may have. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. Thanks for doing that. So some good points that we definitely want to come back to. I was on a call this Saturday morning with one of my clients and his accountant had really dived into the stimulus package, and it's amazing how much money there is available. I mean, he was saying owners' salaries can be, the government will cover owners' salaries. In certain cases, they will even cover IRA and retirement fund contributions. So I was amazed at how much money is available in the stimulus package. I think you got to figure out how to get it, but I was very encouraged after that call.
Absolutely, and it's about time that small business owners got as much as the big corporations.
I'm with you.
Almost as much, not quite.
All right.
Yeah.
So Parker, do you want to share some of your perspectives and maybe share some of what you've been doing with the stores that you work closely with as it relates to cash flow and other topics?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Mark. Jim, that was great. Thanks for your introduction. As soon as you talked about toilet paper, I chuckled to myself because this morning about 8 o'clock, my wife walks in and she was just beaming from ear to ear. She was kind of doing a dance. And what she was holding in her hand was 9 rolls of toilet paper that she got at the store. And I mean, I've never seen such relief in her for something so small. And I guess that pun is intended. On that note, you talked about the 6, the 12, and the 26-week plan. To be totally honest, I haven't been thinking about the 26-week plan in the last 2 weeks. The conversations that I've had with most stores have been around kind of the 4, 8, and 12-week scenario. And part of that's because in times of crisis, the best decision are the quick, short-term decisions that are communicated loudly. We've all been there. I bet you every single retailer on this call today has made a decision a week ago that now is out of date, irrelevant, doesn't apply. And I've certainly made a ton of them, along with the help of the retailers that I've made. So going back to your point about control, is we control what we can based on the information we have today, which is changing all the time. So short-term, quick decisions that you communicate loudly to your team, I think is the leadership position that we should take, and also probably the most healthy because we just don't know. So the conversations that I've had have been around 4 areas. The first one is with 75% of the population in America right now being in some type of stay-at-home order, what is the sales plan that we can be looking at as retailers? It looks totally different. What is our sales plan and how can we project sales going forward? The second one then is what is our marketing message? And I break the marketing message really down into 2 pieces. The first one is how do we make sure we are the juggernaut or we are the catalyst for activity in our community? What are things that we're using to create activity and helping people stay together virtually right now? So that's the daily marketing message. And then the other one is then how do we advertise and communicate that we're still available to provide products for retailers if we are? And what does our business look like as a result of that? I do mention that on the marketing side, communication is daily, and both of those communications can be done daily. The open rates right now are 30 to 40% for most emails, which is way up from 20 to 25%, which has been kind of the industry norm. People are answering their phones, and so we have those mediums that really we didn't use as much to be able to generate business right now, and that's the sales or marketing outreach. The third question then I'm answering is how do I take care of my team? What are my options in terms of taking care of them? And then the fourth one, and you already alluded to it, Jim, is, okay, now what do my finances look like? And what should I do in terms of talking to my creditors? And what is going to be available to me in terms of government stimulus? And what's the best option for my business based on what seems to be available? So there's been a lot of chatter, positive chatter, on the RIA think tank about this. The survey that the RIA sent out was great in terms of the fact that we're all in a very similar situation. So I know that all of you have talked to resources. And so what I was hoping to do in one of those 4 areas is really opening this up to questions, because maybe your question is sales related, maybe it's marketing related, maybe it's team related, or maybe it's finance related. But in light of how everything is changing, I'd love to be able to talk about these, answer the questions you might have, and then field them on a more of a customized level, because I don't know what you know, and maybe something's changed in the last day. I'll give you an example. About an hour before this call, I got an email from my banker. And my banker said, hey, Parker, the PPP, the Payment Protection Program, is probably a good option for you and for the businesses that you work with. And I'm going to have more information about that on Friday. In order to prepare for that, Parker, what I'd like for you to do is get these documents put together. First, I want you to have your 941 from your last quarter ready to send to me. So essentially my Q4 941 that validates that I have employees. Number 2, I want you to send me your last 14 months of payroll so we can use that to average what your average payroll is, so we can provide a 2.5-month loan to you. Number 3, I want you to also provide me a end-of-year balance sheet and an end-of-year profit and loss statement. Although we're going to have a digital application probably ready for you, these 4 documents are something we're definitely going to look at, and that by getting them in the pipeline now, it'll help you. Now, I didn't know that an hour ago. I wasn't prepared to say that on this call, but I just got that information. And maybe some of you have already got it from your bankers, maybe not. But it seems like those are documents that they're going to be asking you for as we determine eligibility and amount of the PPP.
So Parker, I have a question. It seems everyone I've spoken to and everything I've read so far in terms of managing costs and projecting cash flow, everybody seems to think you should go to your landlord first. I guess a question for Parker or for Jim. What's your sense on that?
My comment's a little cynical. Jim, do you have something more positive you might be able to say? And then I can come back with my cynical comment.
Well, there's a old Italian saying, and I can't remember I can't say it in Italian, but anyway, my wife uses it all the time, that a closed mouth gathers no flies. I don't know what that has to do with it anyway. But basically there's no harm in asking. And so I would say, yeah, Mark, that it's probably the first place you'd want to at least go and begin the conversation.
Because yeah, just personally, the first thing I did probably a week or so ago is I reached out to my landlord and I said, hey, I need help. And where I keep my office, there's been distressed. A lot of the other tenants moved out, so I knew I had a fair amount of leverage, and he complied like that. You know, it was the easiest conversation I ever had with him. So I don't know what the other experience from the group is, but you know, that seems like a good place to start.
So what I would say is it seems that asking the landlords for abatement or deferral of rent has been the most challenging of all creditors that running stores have. There are a few circumstances, and I think some of the retailers are on this call, where the landlord has converted to percentage rent for a period of time. So instead of being a flat fee, they're basing it on sales that'll be happening over the next 30, 60, 90 days. We've also seen for landlords allow for some type of rent abatement, and then they're tacking that rent on to the end of the lease. So, hey, you don't have to pay April and May, but you then will put it as 2 months at the end of the lease. There's other landlords that have said, no, sorry, I'm not gonna budge. And I would say, as a rule of thumb, that seems to be more of the landlords that have multiple properties in the area. So the larger ones seem less flexible than the smaller ones. Going back to your fly mouth comment, Jim, you're right. You should be asking these things. I've just seen the least amount of movement from landlords. Does any retailers have any comments of things that you've asked landlords that they've granted for you that might be good information for the other retailers on this call? Is there a way that we could get people to raise their hand mark or something like that?
Yeah, raise their hand or hit the chat button. I know there's some, Chris Hartner just posted some stuff in the chat. So yeah, I'd be curious what success or what experience different retailers have had dealing with their landlords.
Can you hear us?
Yes.
I hear that.
Well, I can't type, so I'm going to talk if that's okay. I know that we talked with our landlord, and we've had two that have said, you know, we can either defer it and pay it out through the period of our lease, or push it off and add the months to the end of our lease, which is pretty common. You know, 2 of our 3 have said that.
Is that Mitch Allen?
Yes, it is. Sorry.
This Mitch? Hey,
yes.
Mitch.
So one of my dilemmas is for the PPP loan and the non-payback portion of that, you can't add the first period or months prior to your origination of your loan date if that rent has not been paid. So you have to pay that rent anyway, but you don't get to start writing your rent off until your loan origination date is activated. Are you aware of that, Parker?
Yeah, so I think what you're saying is you're talking about the 8-week period. So he's talking about the Payment Protection Program and what is eligible for forgiveness within the terms of that loan. Is that correct, Mitch? That's what you're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah, and what you're saying is that the rent that is forgiven will be the rent that is for the 8 weeks after disbursement of that loan to your business.
That's
is that
correct.
what you're that? And that's my understanding of it as well.
So if you pay your rent this month, you don't get that money back. That goes, you know, if you don't pay it, you're going to be putting it on the end of your lease, or however you decide to defer your payment.
So, and Chris Hartner just posted something. He said you don't get forgiveness if you use the money for pay, rent, or utilities. And again, I haven't read the stimulus that closely. Obviously, I plan to talk to my accountant, and I would encourage everyone else on this call to make use of those people as well.
Yeah, Chris just clarified his comments. If you don't use it, you get forgiveness if you use the Payroll Protection Program, the PPP. If you use it for payroll, if you use it for rent, if you use it for interest, if you own your building, mortgage interest, or you use it for utilities. In that situation, it is forgivable, provided that you maintain your payroll wages at 75% of your last quarter, which would be Q1, or you have the same number of full-time equivalents on your team as of Q1. However, that's as of 6/30/2020. So in other words, you can furlough and then rehire those people by 6/30 and still meet that requirement. I know that's clear as mud. And I'm happy to try to clarify that.
Yeah, that is correct information.
Hey, John and Betsy Hughes, how are you?
Hi, how are you?
Hey, guys.
Yeah, that just following up on that is correct information. I've been following it incredibly closely, and two things just happened, like in the last 2 hours, where the applications are, according to mention, they're going to be available this Friday, and Treasury Department is giving the green light and saying that yeah, it's all those things that you stated are correct, at least at this time, and you do have it's an 8-week window. And what you said was correct about the number of them that keeping the employees and the percentage, and you can get up to 2.5 times or 250% of your average payroll that you can use for 8 weeks, and it can cover rent, utilities, and payroll, and that would be forgiven. That 8-week period to be turned into a grant at that time.
Perfect. Thanks, John, for confirming that.
And then I saw where John Mortimer had raised. Go ahead, John. John Mortimer, I think, wanted to say something. John? Okay, maybe not. So, and then I see a comment here from Bob Dyer out of St. Louis, and he says, we proposed to our landlord and he accepted to simply use a security deposit for April and May rent. So, you know, the stories I'm hearing, Parker, are sort of, I guess, a little more encouraging than what you've heard. I think it depends on the landlord, depends on the neighborhood, and depends on, you know, what his particular situation is.
That's good news.
All right, the questions are coming in fast and furious. Parker, can you follow the Zoom group chat, Parker and Jim?
Yep.
From Jeannie Beaver, frustration of purpose. I feel like everyone on this call is having frustration of purpose. What about that as an argument for not paying rent?
That's a new one to me, Jeannie. Can you elaborate on that? You might have to unmute yourself.
Okay. Yeah, no, a woman who is a yoga studio owner called me this morning, and she has the same landlord I have, a large publicly traded company. We're not very optimistic that we're going to get anything back, but she brought this comment up, and I was like, really? And if you look it up, which I just spent about 2 seconds, and then I sent it to my lawyer, and he got back to me right away. He's like, you know, you might have something, I'll get back to you. So I just didn't know, maybe he's just trying to get a couple hours out of me, I don't know, but he's going to look into it. But it basically, the idea is that unforeseen circumstances that prevent you from being able to utilize the contract. And, you know, for her, it's absolute, like she won't have anybody in that studio for 2 months. And for us,
sure,
you know, we won't either for a month have anyone in our store. We still can do some business. So I don't know if that'll be a reason that won't work, but it's obvious to everybody on this call, we're not getting what we used to get.
Yeah, there's a couple of great comments coming in through the chat. One goes back to your question a little while ago, Mitch, and you were like, hey, listen, we're not going to get the money, if we get the money for the PPP for a couple to 3 weeks. What do you do about this month's rent? And the recommendation through the chat was, yeah, so if you get deferment for April and May, that's a really good, that's probably the best scenario for you. And then you can start paying rent once the Payroll Protection Program kicks in, the disbursement of that loan kicks in for you. That's the best scenario. It's also really good to see. There's a lot of comments here that people are getting deferment for at least a month or delays up to 3 months. So going back to your point, Mark, there seems to be some lenience coming from rents, which is terrific.
If there are no more questions, what I wanted to do was throw it out to the group. Again, I've had a bunch of private conversations with people, and I got a sneak peek at Running Insight yesterday, and I'm encouraged by a lot of the things the different stores are doing. Jeff Kelly, I know from Jeff Anderson from Kelly's Pace up in Mystic is using this time to sort of redesign and rebuild his store. If Rich Wills is on the call, I know he sent me a text and told me he's really investing a lot of marketing dollars right now and taking advantage of things. So, Rich, I see you're on the call. Do you want to speak to some of the things that you're doing?
Sure. We got on board with Monty Keeler's Fitted online store that utilizes basically drop ship from the manufacturers about 2 months ago. And so we're just leaning really, really heavily on that. And we're putting a lot of money and time and effort into redoing our website so that we can accommodate virtual fittings and schedulings of virtual fittings. And so we're just, my theory is I'm going to spend the money that I need to spend now as quickly as I can while I still have it and get these up and going. So that's my philosophy for the day.
Anybody else want to share stories about some of the things they're doing to sort of keep the cash flowing with sales? Again, I've seen on Instagram people doing deliveries and different things like that. Anybody want to share any particularly successful experiences that they're having?
This is Nick Stanko from Ann Arbor Running Company. We haven't done it yet, but we have it in the works, and we're hoping to hold out for a few more weeks until we get closer to maybe when we can open. But we're going to do a limited edition hoodie and something that just kind of, people, if they want to support us, some restaurants are doing it in town here. It won't be a huge thing, but hopefully it'll get us some cash that we can, keep things going and right before we open again. So limited edition, something that people aren't going to have access to. We'll see if it works.
It's a good idea. So, Rich Wills, can you get back on the phone and talk about the virtual fitting option?
Sure. So one of the groups that we've been working with is Upper Quadrant. And some people are familiar with them. And they put some complimentary materials out on a virtual fitting a couple of days ago. And so we just modified the process a little bit for how we think it's going to work best. We just did filming for a commercial, not a commercial, but like a 1-minute video so that we can tell customers quickly and easily, this is what to expect in a virtual fitting. We're going to ask you to do these few things. We ask you to do a little art project by tracing your feet and measuring the distance. And just try to make it so that it's as frictionless as possible for people to do that. And our hope is that when we turn the virtual fitting process back on and really lean on it with advertising and social media and email, that we'll start to begin to fill up our calendar and need to bring some of our part-time employees back. So that's the virtual fitting in a nutshell. And basically, it's as simple as having the customer put their phone or laptop down on the ground in front of their feet and kind of doing the super feet, or not super feet, but super feet and fleet feet lunge test. Walk away from the phone a couple of times. Let us see your arches in a weighted position, and having a conversation around that information. So I don't know if it's going to work great or not, but that's what we're rolling up, and we're going to try and get that launched by end of day Friday.
Well, yeah, keep us, Rich, very curious how that goes, and would love to hear, and maybe on a subsequent call, you could actually share some of the, share the experiences, sort of the good, the bad, and the ugly of how that's going.
I'll be happy to. I have a lot of nightmares about how this could go, but I think that we'll muddle and learn our way through it and end up with a really cool, viable thing that I think will be a part of all of our businesses going forward.
So I see a question here from Adam White, and I assume it's Adam White. Hey, Adam. He asks, will we be able to bring back staff that have been previously unemployed earlier once approved by the program? So does that mean if somebody was laid off prior to your store closing, or I guess I want to make sure I understand that question.
The idea, Whitey, is that it's all a matter of keeping your full-time equivalents or 75% of your wages. So who that employee is that you bring back to make yourself compliant with that to achieve forgiveness is not really important. The tracking, from what I understand, the tracking is going to all come off of 941s. So and we don't know exactly what submission is going to look like, but the fact that the 941 is a part of the application process makes me think that's how they'll keep track of it. That was also true with the Families First Coronavirus Relief Act that was released earlier. The way they were going to do the tax credit was through 941. So it's a matter of hitting the number. I don't think it's employee to employee. It's not a tax ID comparison. It's a 941 comparison. Hopefully that clarifies your question, Whitey. Oh, that wasn't your question.
I know.
Oh, it was a different Adam. It was a different Adam.
Okay. All right. How many Adams? I guess we have many Adams on the phone.
We're all compiled of Adams.
So good comment from Red Coyote. Hopefully everybody's seen that. Their team's doing Zoom for virtual fittings. I've heard of other stores doing that. And that sounds like, I think people sort of enjoy that experience. I think, look, right now, and I think just in the subsequent weeks, it's only going to get more so the case. But look, everybody sitting at home has major cabin fever. So if you can figure out a way to engage them, I think that's fantastic. And I think the Zoom fittings actually sound like they could be a lot of fun.
Yeah, a lot of good resources have been mentioned in the chat, from Skype to Zoom to Fitted to Upper Quadrants resources. Lots of different options there. I think that, going to the financial side, I wanted to make sure we talked about this. I think it's important for all of us and you to kind of know what your burn rate is. And a simple starting cash, looking at your expenses and determining kind of how long the cash will last is really helpful to know who to ask for and what to ask for. Vendors are being flexible. You guys know that. And as you start to put those new dating terms into QuickBooks, it moves your AP out. Credit card companies, your creditor are being flexible in terms of how and when your payments are due. Making that phone call. Utility companies are also being flexible in terms of when and how you have to pay them, including your cable company. And by putting that into a really simple spreadsheet that starts with your cash on hand and kind of factors in your expenses plus projected revenue, which I can talk about in just a sec, is really helpful. And the reason why I bring that up now is then you can determine how to invest. And Rich talked about, investing right now in Fitted and his online application, which makes sense. We all know we need to be there. This is a good time. I know another retailer is painting his entire store. People are talking about, enhancing their store by re-merchandising or just doing a downright great cleaning of the business today. But knowing what you can spend and still stay within your burn rate, to me, is the visibility that goes back to Jim's opening remarks about having control. If we're just kind of trying to, I think it's going to work out, that's when anxiety can grow for us, some of us more than others. But getting a feel of what that burn looks like will really help. And then if you get the PPP or EIDL, you can drop that in and kind of see how much longer you will go out. Investment right now with visibility is a wonderful way for you to spend this time to keep your team going, provided you have an idea of what things look like, 8 to 12 weeks out.
Interesting, Parker, that you made those comments about painting the store. I had a conversation with somebody at Home Depot recently, and they said their #1 selling product in the store over the last 2 weeks has been paint. I guess everybody who's locked in their house is painting their house. So hopefully my wife doesn't hear about that and think it's a good idea for me to paint our house. But, you know, I think it's a good idea and actually an inexpensive idea as well.
And ultimately,
Thanks
this
for
is
that,
an
Mark.
industry that has got a huge amount of demand by consumers right at the moment. You know, if you were hairdressers, you'd be in real bad shape. But when I'm out on my daily walks, I am seeing more and more runners every day. And I think, as Mark pointed out, Parker too, that as cabin fever sets in, people are going to be looking for guidance on how they can take control beyond toilet paper. And certainly getting themselves healthy and maintaining their health and maintaining their immune system, you've got the tools to help them do that. And it's just really communicating it to them and letting them know how you're there, when you're there, and through all of the things that Parker was talking about with Zoom meetings and Skype, and no matter how you do virtual fittings, but keeping in touch with that customer and giving them things that they can control. And you know, we're not going to shut down running. It's just not going to happen. So the customer's there.
Yeah, Jim, that's a great point. And a lot of you, I don't know if it's a corporate messaging from Fleet Feet or just from some of the individual stores I follow on Instagram, but they've been basically saying running is not canceled. And running is far from canceled. I'm with Jim. I just see so many people out there running and moving. And I know in my own house, my teenage daughter has taken up running. I'm convinced she's running to her boyfriend's house every day, but that's okay with me because that's 2 miles away. So I think by the time this is over, she's going to be ready to do her first marathon. But I think we will come out of this. And when we do come out of this, I think the sport of running and participation numbers will be very solid. I think events will change, and particularly big events like national events like Chicago and New York. I'll be curious how those fare this fall. But I think the sport of running is going to be in very good shape. Anything else? Any other comments? Anything else that people want to talk about?
Hey guys, this is Carrie from Palmetto Running. I just wanted to put the word out there. I don't know if any of you have noticed us starting to follow you with our new account, Run Local. We started a completely nonprofit organization where we are working with the people from Run House who started the social distance running project. And we created a line of merchandise based on their Keep Running project that they started. And Run Local, like I said, is completely nonprofit. The way that it works is you promote it to your customers, and your customer goes onto our website, and they choose to either purchase an item, which we have 2 shirts and a tote bag, or they can make a donation. And all of the proceeds from that purchase or donation will go directly to your store. So they go onto the website, they put an item in their cart, and they type the name of their favorite running store, their local running store, into the checkout. And so what we will do with that information is contact you directly, and on a weekly basis, we'll help you set up a Venmo account and just send you the money that your customers are giving us. So it's a really awesome initiative. We've already raised over $200 just in 24 hours, which is really awesome. But we just want your help in getting the word out so that we can give you guys some money to help alleviate some of this stress.
That's a great program. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
Anything
Retailers have also been using Challenge Hound to help track virtual runs. So if you're looking for a way to track runs of and get virtual community, Challenge Hound is a website that you can go, and I don't think there's a cost for it. And it hooks up with Strava information.
Is that Mitch or Michelle? I see you on the screen. I don't hear you though.
No, we're not on the screen. Hey, we were looking at this regarding the PPL versus EIDL. When I talked to my banker this morning, was he told me if you do get, you really can't get both, but if you do, you can refinance the EIDL through your PPP loan. That's what I was told this morning, because I had applied for it. I got a confirmation that said it really didn't give me any information, but I did say that we wanted the EIDL 10,000. But my banker told me today that we could refinance that back into our PPP loan.
So you can't get both, but you can.
Well, that's basically what he said. He said, I mean, the note I wrote is, he told me, he says this can be refinanced with you back through your PPP loan. So if you get the 10,000 from EIDL, you can refinance it back into your PPP. But there's fee, and I don't know if those fees are waived or whatnot, but.
Yeah, the most positive thing I pull from that, Mitch, is that you're connected with your banker and information is getting sent out to them. That's probably the best news of all of that. The mechanics of that were confusing to me, but I guess that's why we have bankers.
Well, the biggest problem that I had with it all, Parker, is these loans are not available yet. The regulatory guidelines have not been established. And maybe it was somebody was talking about something was supposed to be done on Friday, and maybe that's it. But as of now, all we're doing is turning in applications.
Yeah, they said that the applications, the plan is that they will be ready on Friday. That just came out today. Treasury Department has said the money's been released, it's in the application. And what you just said, my understanding was that that loan can be converted from the webinar I was just on. But again, that's a webinar that I was on. I can't state the fact, but that was mentioned that you can convert that.
Hey, this is Ray. I'd like to ask a question that's been confusing me on the PPP. Let me make a scenario instead of just talking all the words that confuse me round and round. If using fake numbers, if I was able to qualify for, say, just for easy round numbers, $50,000 for a PPP, and based on my payroll, and then a lot of my employees don't want to work for whatever reason. They don't want to work. So even though I'm bringing in whoever I want to bring in, I only am able to show that I used 30K on payroll. So there's a 20K difference. I cannot get a straight answer on whether or not that 20K can then be used on rent. Some people say, sure, rent counts just as good. And other people say if your payroll goes down, there's a formula to reduce what you can write off, and that 20K you can use, but you'd have to pay it back with a loan. Can anyone answer that definitively?
Well, Ray, I can tell you the way I interpret it. And the way I interpret it is, as of June 30th, you either have to have 75% of the wages from the previous quarter, or the same number of full-time equivalents on your payroll. If you don't have either of those, then the amount not used to payroll gets converted into a term loan at the end of the year. But if that's my understanding.
That's the only stipulations that I know of too. And then you could just use if you don't use it all, the amount that you do for payroll and rent and utilities, and if you don't use it all, of course, that does become a loan at 4% that you can pay over 10 years, or you have 6 months to pay it back. But if you did do more than that amount that you needed over those 8 weeks.
Ray, does that clarify things for you a little bit?
I suppose. I mean, it's still in that you can play all kinds of games with those numbers. What if, if 50% of my workforce doesn't want to work today, but in 3 weeks, a bunch of them want to come back, or 4 weeks, or in 7 weeks. And in 7 weeks, a bunch of them come back. So for 6 weeks, I was at 50% of my workforce, and then it jumps back up to 76% of my workforce in the last week. I obviously didn't use all that money on payroll because they just came back. Can I use that dollars and just stroke a check to my utilities and then my landlord and have it forgiven? Or is there going to be some formula where that doesn't count?
Yeah, so yeah, we're thinking the exact same way. And here's why I believe it will be forgiven, Ray. And that is, think about what we're doing is the act is basically creating a hiring frenzy at the end of second quarter, getting people back on the job. And that's the intention of the act. So right now, part-time people can be furloughed, make more than they're making with you through unemployment. You hire them back. We have a hiring frenzy. We get out of this, and the economy is generating income for people who consume goods that keeps the economy going. So I think that's the spirit of the act, is the game that you're talking about playing.
And where that might be relevant, I mean, I don't want this to be like you're playing games, but it's just being smart with your money. If your landlord says, I'll give you free rent for 2 months, and you have that situation I just described where at the end of the 8 weeks, you actually have extra money left over, but he gave you free rent, then you don't have anywhere to claim that. Whereas if your landlord said, all right, you're going to have some money to pay me in these first 2 months, I'll give the 3rd and 4th month rent free. So then you have a way of proving payment of that money now, and then he gives you the 3rd and 4th month off instead of the 1st and 2nd month, if that makes sense.
Right.
And that's smarter management of that dollars that you're getting.
Yeah, and the reason why you're not getting a straight answer is that right now it's just not clear. And it's either through accountants or employment lawyers. Everyone's trying to kind of figure this whole thing out. And as information comes out, we'll know more. Like I said, things I said yesterday are wrong today, based on new information.
Chris Hartner, I see your name on the screen. Can we hear you?
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yeah.
Hey, Chris.
Hey, Ray, I would say on what you're doing, and this isn't, I don't know exactly how you would do this, but if you feel there would be a little bit of a later wave of people coming back, is you could start your loan later, not that you want to, but the 8 weeks, I believe the 8 weeks has to end by June 30th. So, you could start your loan a little bit later. I think you can still apply, and then it seems like you'll be able to say when you want the loan to start, because that does impact people and their expenses. But you'll want that loan to be start at the start of when you'd have your most expenses, and you do truly have to assume that they're going to go back in and fine tooth comb, did you really spend it at the right times and all that? And I believe that's kind of on your bankers to do that. They're clearly bending every normal rule by not requiring collateral or a personal guarantee. But if you can plot it out and you think that's going to happen for you that way, if you can get by a little bit longer until you take that money in, that would be smart. And the other thing that would be smart, when you talked about your rent, it doesn't necessarily say in there that you have to pay your rent on a regular schedule, and you could save paying that rent and make sure your check date is within your window, at 1 or 2 rent payments near the end of it. I don't know that they're going to say, well, that's not your normal schedule of rent payment. That would be a risk, but certainly you'd have done, with the spirit of what they're trying to do, But it is very important to know that that window from when you get your loan, you have 8 weeks. And in theory, the biggest challenge you would have is if your employees do not come back and you're not paying them. But a lot of your other expenses are fairly high too. So since the loan is only based on payroll, and it is 2.5 months of average payroll related expenses, when you lump in rent, utilities, other benefits and stuff that aren't included in that other number, it shouldn't be that hard to use it up. Thanks. Sorry.
No, that's good. That's good information. That's good perspective from both you guys. But anything else? Anything else that people want to talk about? So a couple of things, if we're going to wrap up. I saw Terry Shallow was on the call. Terry and the Running Industry Association have prepared sort of a great document of information. I think it includes their research study and their sort of COVID recommendations. So definitely go to the RIA website and take a look at that. Very helpful information. And then as far as other things go, something that hasn't been mentioned, and I don't know if it's relevant in all the communities out there in the country, but I know it's relevant where we are here in North Jersey, which has been very hard hit, is the local governments are also offering grants. So it seems like everything we've talked about today has been pretty much around the federal legislation, but there's also local money available. So I would encourage everybody to go out there and look into that and pursue that as well. So, I think everyone seems to have found this call very helpful. So keep an eye on your email. Christina and I will try and hustle up another call in the next week or so, because as Parker said and as Jim said, I mean, this is such a fast moving, I've never seen anything in my life move so quickly. Whereas you make a bunch of decisions Monday based on the information you have and you think they're good decisions. And by Thursday, things have changed so much that you're constantly reevaluating. So we'll keep the communication flowing, and we will do our best to organize another call, if not next week, certainly soon thereafter. Parker and Jim, any concluding remarks, anything you want to say to sort of wrap things up for everybody?
Again, I would just point people to Google Bill Gates TED Talk 5 days ago. And I think you'll get a much different perspective of what the near future is really going to look like. And it's pretty optimistic. So.
We're all looking for good news. I'll tell you the best news I got yesterday was a New York Times article about my state, the state of Washington. And if you recall, the first reported case was in this state. And Washington researchers studying the coronavirus said that over the last 2 weeks, the per person contagion rate has gone from 2.3 to 1.4. And so what we've seen is the social distancing efforts that we're taking, and again, we're a little ahead of the game, are starting to have an impact in terms of the spread. And I was looking for that good news. I was hoping for that good news. And it was a highlight read yesterday for me. So there are some things that are happening positively to get us back where we all want to be.
One more comment, if I may. I don't know if there's a way to do it, but I would so greatly appreciate a document or a website or something where, with all the resources we have on this call, when people truly know something, not kind of know, kind of 75% know, but when stuff is known and someone can suggest a best practices, this is what you should do with PPP, the SBA, various versions. If there was some guidelines to say, look, ask your banker about this. I don't have a banker that I trust, as you know, that I just truly trust to get it right. I'm probably somebody in here, John, maybe, I don't know, who really does think they know what's going on. It would be awesome to have some place I can go to with confidence to say, this is what other people are doing, and I'm going to try to mimic this pattern of what I ask for. I don't know if that's possible to set that up in some way and, you know, not hold people to it. Like, if you make a mistake, of course, no one will hold you to it, but have something that is just settling to look at to think I'm doing the right thing.
That's a good point, Ray. Let me work with Mike Jacobson in Running Insight. And, you know, I agree. I think so many of us on this call, you know, we're sort of finding our way, and it's almost like a treasure hunt. As you sort of move down the road, you come across good information, and we'll figure out a way to share that with everyone as best we can.
I nominate Bob Kennedy as one of the experts. I mean, I read a lot of this stuff, but he read the whole 880-page thing. And then he's tried to interpret it, and I've talked to him about it. it is kind of a cluster trying to put it all together. And there's different, little graphs and charts that are pretty helpful, but the true specifics of it have been kind of elusive. But you might put him on that committee.
Bob's been volunteered. There you have it.
Yep, voluntold. We like to use that.
Yes, I like it. All right, and I think Christina Henderson has been recording this call. So what we'll do is we'll figure out a way to post it on either the Running Event or Running Insight website. So for those of you who want to go back and relive the highlights, you'll be able to do it. And for people who weren't able to be on the call, hopefully they'll be able to access the information as well. Christina, anything from your corner before we wrap things up?
No, just thanks everyone for being here. Like Mark said, we want to continue to do this, and any feedback that you have, any way that this could go better, more smoothly, let me know. If you want to send questions beforehand, I can get those to Mark or, an expert that we think could help answer. We can do that beforehand. Just, we want to continue to do this, get people together to talk. So let us know how we can continue to support you right now.
Okay, everybody. Thank you. Good luck. And hopefully I will see you all on the phone very soon and in person not too long after that.
Thanks. This is awesome.
All right. Bye, guys.
Thanks, Mark.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Jim. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.